See, vegan baking and vegan cooking, in truth, are actually way more similar than you might think. And I'll admit there are some differences, but I think when you know them and you know what they are, then you can really leverage them to your advantage. As a professional vegan baker, at this point, I have lost count of how many times people have come up to me and said, I would love to know how to bake. That is so amazing that you can do that. I could never do it. I'm a great cook, but I can't bake. I'm here to tell you that is absolute nonsense. If you've ever thought this to yourself, then keep watching because this video is for you, and make sure you give this video a like while you're at it, because I'm about to tell you how this whole idea of vegan baking and cooking being completely different animals is 100% false, and being good at one does not mean you're necessarily going to be bad at the other. And finally, I'm going to explain to you how you can definitely master vegan baking even if you're just a good cook. Are you ready? Let's do this. Before we get started, let me just say hi, welcome back to the channel. And if this is your first time here, I'm Natalia Lima, founder and owner of Curious Cat Bakery, an all-vegan bakery based out of Florida, where the only rule is that everything needs to taste just as good or better than the real deal. And this is the place where I share my baking tips, recipes, and hacks. So if this is something you're into, make sure you click that subscribe button so you get notified every time a new video comes out. I also have a free guide to successful vegan baking, so I'll put the link to that in the description and the comments below so you can download that for free if you'd like. Alright, now let's get to some myth debunking, shall we? Vegan baking and vegan cooking, in truth, are actually way more similar than you might think. So first, let's look at the similarities, okay? If you look at the qualities that make for a great cook, they're pretty much the same as the ones that make a great baker, or they're at least adaptable. So in my opinion, there's about 3 skills that really make for a great cook. Number 1, you're innovative. So there's a great article by Mark Bittman from the New York Times. It's called How Do You Get Really Good at Cooking? And I'll make sure to link that in the description below if you want to read it. It's a nice read. It makes this point that people learn how to cook either from a recipe book or from their family members. And then some people, a good cook, just sticks to that. They stick to what's reliable and what they learned, and they stick to that. That makes a good cook. But what makes a great cook is somebody who takes that knowledge further, takes some risks, and tries to be innovative and expand onto what they've learned. So they go, okay, I know this technique works. What if I try adding a different spice? Or what if I try this with something else? You know, and they just try something different, and they take the risk that it might not work, but also it might turn out amazing. That same skill set applies to vegan baking as well. There is such an element of trying it and seeing if it works. I've talked about it in so many of my videos. So if it turns out amazing, you added that to your knowledge library. That's another technique. That's another combination of things that works. If it didn't work, it's also added into the knowledge library. Okay, that's not how you do it. Now I'm gonna try something that does. So being innovative really makes for a great baker as well as a cook. The second skill that makes for a great cook is you know your flavors. Now that's kind of a given, right? In order to be a great cook, you really need to know what flavors work together. So garlic and onion, always a winning pair. Adding some lemon zest will really brighten up a dish. If you add some vinegar to a savory dish, it will really add some acidity and make it more interesting. You know what makes your and other people's taste buds happy, so you use those combinations and rules whenever you're cooking to make dishes that will have that effect. That same skill set makes for a great baker too. Sometimes it's because you've tasted it before, and sometimes you just know it, like, well, in your gut, that it's not going to work. So you don't really want to make a cilantro chocolate chip cookie, do you? Because you've had cilantro and you've had a chocolate chip cookie, and you just know, listen, I don't need to do that. I know those two are not going to combine. I know those two are not going to work together, and that's just going to be a waste of time and not a great combination. If you have that common sense, you can be a good baker. And if you really hone in those skills, then you can be a great baker and a great cook. Third skill that makes for a great cook is being passionate about food. Because when you're passionate about food, you're always thinking about it. It's always in the back of your brain. So you have a meal somewhere and you start thinking, ooh, I like that combination. I'm gonna try it when I get home on something else. Or I wonder how I could tweak this and really make it my own. It's just always swirling in there. But if it's something you're not passionate about, and it's not something that really occupies mental space, and it's not something that you're really gonna dedicate a lot of time to, because being passionate really applies to vegan baking and vegan cooking. You need to be passionate about it in order to get really good at it. I mean, if you're passionate about food, you're gonna spend more time in the kitchen. If you're really enjoying your time cooking for other people and for yourself, experimenting with flavors, then you're really gonna take the time to learn, to pay attention, to hone in your skills and practice, which I've said in pretty much all of my videos here on the channel. That is really the key to being great at vegan baking, is just practicing a whole lot. So those are the similarities between a great cook and a great baker. And if you agree with any of these, make sure you give this video a like. Now let's get to the differences, because I'll admit there are some. Number one, there's less room for improvisation. I'll admit, when you're cooking, there's more room for a little bit of this or a dash of that and a sprinkle of the other thing. In baking, not so much, especially when it comes to the basic elements of it. So there's a reason for that, and that is because when you're cooking something, you have all these ingredients that, well, work on their own. You could individually eat a carrot or a pepper. But when it comes to baking, the ingredients aren't really something on their own. You're not going to just eat flour or yeast or baking soda. They need to act together to create something that's edible. So that's why you don't really have a lot of room for improvisation, because for that magic to happen in baking and for all of those ingredients who aren't edible on their own to become something that you can eat, you need a chemistry reaction. And it's pretty exact. You can't just throw a dash of yeast with a lot of flour and hope that it would become bread. It's not enough. It's not going to happen. You can't just put a pinch of sugar into a cake and hope that it comes together. It might not get a bind. So there is less room for innovation in that aspect on the basic elements that make the chemistry reaction happen. But there is some room for innovation and for improvisation when it comes to the flavors. So you can switch up the cinnamon for cardamom, or, you know, instead of doing a lemon curd, do an orange curd. Like, you can try to change some of the flavors, but when it comes to the basic elements that cause that chemistry reaction for the baked good to become a baked good that you can recognize and eat, yeah, there's less room for improvisation in that area. And even when you do make those changes, like if you're gonna add cocoa powder to a vanilla recipe, for example, that's doable. That in most recipes, you can do that. But you have to be mindful of how you're affecting the chemistry reaction. So if you add cocoa powder to a recipe, it's gonna dry it up. Now you have more solid ingredients, so you might have to add some almond milk. You might have to add something liquid to the recipe to balance things out. So there is room for improvisation, you just have to do it more mindfully. So if you're going to add something to the recipe or take it away, you really need to think, how is this affecting the overall recipe? Do I need to replace something else? And I've talked a lot about this in this video over here, and I'll link to it in the description below, that really you can improvise, you can make changes, but you always need to balance things out. Just switching one thing for the other never really works, especially with vegan baking. Another difference between vegan baking and cooking is that you do need to be more organized as a baker. I get it. A lot of the people that tell me, oh, I'm a great cook, but I can't bake, they say they're too messy to be bakers. Fair point, especially considering what we just talked about in vegan baking, how there's less room for improvisation. You do have to be more organized. That's why I talked about in this video over here, how one of my favorite hacks for becoming a great vegan baker is just to lay out your ingredients ahead of time. Measure them, put it in bowls, little tiny bowls and things, just lay them all out so that you make sure you have all of your ingredients and that they're all ready for you. That way you're not running around in the middle of a recipe and then realizing, oh shoot, I forgot that I don't have baking soda. Let me just substitute it for baking powder and hopefully it works, it won't work. Or that when you're baking something, you go, oh shoot, I forgot this, let me go grab it, and then you can't find it, and then when you come back, it's burnt. You just avoid all of that if you're more organized. So I get it. Not everyone's organized. Not everyone's an organization freak, kind of like I am. That's okay. But you can become a great baker if you just put yourself in that mindset when you are baking. Make sense? So in short, what I'm saying is what I say to every single person who's ever told me, I'm a great cook, but I can't bake. Yes, you can, okay? Anyone can learn how to bake because it's a learned skill. It's not something you're born with. What do I mean by that? Well, if I decided that I was going to be a great singer, that's never going to happen, okay? Because I needed to be born with a good voice. And unfortunately, when I sing, I sound like a dying cat. It's terrible. I only do it in the car and in the shower where no one can hear me because I will not put anyone through having to listen to that. That being said, baking, fortunately, is not something like that. Anyone can learn how to bake. You just have to learn it. It's like reading or writing. Anyone can do it as long as you learn it. So even if you're messy or you never tried it before or it looks really complicated, believe me, you can do it. I didn't know how to bake a single thing before I got started, vegan or not. And now I own an award-winning bakery. If I can do it, anyone can. So if after watching this you're inspired and you're determined to do it, may I suggest that you start with my free guide to successful vegan baking. It has my top 10 tips for anyone who's just starting out with vegan baking. These are tips that I wish somebody had given me when I was just getting started. You can download it completely for free. I'll put the link in the description in the comments below. Click it, put in your email address, it gets delivered straight to your inbox. I hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys here next time. Until then, make sure you check out this video where I share my best tips to become a great vegan baker, or this one where I share my story going from not knowing how to bake at all to owning an award-winning vegan bakery. I will talk to you guys next time. Until then, stay curious.